I'm only wearing this jersey so I don't get fined, all right? All right. That's enough, gentlemen. Save something for the game, huh? Lord knows you're out of shape. All right. Here's how the game's going to be played. We're going to have 4 quarters. Each of you will have 2 possessions of the Bible. We're adding something new this year, the ability to score a 2-point conversion. How you're going to do that is in this bucket, we have listed, surprise to you guys, you've never seen them before, improvisational items, words or phrases that you have to integrate into your message. You score points by making effective points in your sermon illustrations, and if you can integrate the improvisational items, you will also score a 2-point conversion. Is that clear? Yep. All right. Nice pants.
Nice pants. Nice pants.
All right. Let's play clean. Let's play fair. We're going to start with a coin toss.
Thank you for actually doing it this year, because last year when you were dressed like a giant Cheeto thing.
All right.
My wife's prettier than your wife.
Thank you.
Can we do a moment right now?
I'm concerned about how few lines I have and then you're All right, I'm sorry. Go ahead. We're going to begin with the coin toss. How do you say that?
Is that a hamburger?
We're going to flip a patty of meat.
All right. Yeah!
Let's go. The game's in 3, so let's go. Okay. Is that how you watch us?
All right, I go.
We're going to, as the reigning Super Sunday champion and North Shore senior pastor, you can call heads or tails on the meat patty in the air. Here we go.
Here we go. Heads.
It is not heads, it is tails. Wolfgang wins the toss. Before you get started, want to go for a 2-point conversion?
Here we go. Let's see. Absolutely.
Hand it to me. Hand it to me. Here we go. In and out like Czechoslovakia. In and out like Czechoslovakia. Good luck. First and 10, Wolfgang.
All right. Well, welcome once again to a church service like you've never attended in your life. We are thrilled that you are here, and I'm honored to be part of the competition once again. This last week, we heard an awful lot about believing. You saw it, whether it was the smooth polish of Russell Wilson or whether it was the raw emotion of Doug Baldwin calling out the press. Again and again, everyone was talking about how they believed, even when everybody else had doubts and questions. And I know, last week, many of you, if you're honest like me, when you were watching that game against the Patriots, it crossed your mind that maybe you weren't believing so much. I'll be honest with you, watching that game, I for one had given up hope, right? I remember the moment. It was in the 4th quarter. It looked like we'd picked up a little bit of momentum, and then Russell drops back and throws his 4th interception of the game. Do you remember that moment? And in that moment, Jonathan and I start texting feverishly back and forth. What are we going to do if the Packers win this game, right? and my devoted brother texted back, well, you'll be dressed as Aaron Rodgers, he said. So, awful thoughtful of him. But anyway, I thought about what that loss was going to mean to the city. I mean, people kind of started talking down, all these fans that started to walk out of the stands, but I totally understand that. I mean, it's horrible to watch your team lose, and then to watch somebody else lift the trophy on your very own stadium. That would have been brutal. Hurts. But then it happened. In spite of the odds, seemingly out of nowhere, they began to come back. Wilson's rushing touchdown to the onside kick, to the beast mode, taking it in for the score, to the crazy 2-point conversion, all the way to that heroic overtime catch, right? In that moment, Curse goes from being the dog of the day to the hero of the day, right? Right in that moment. I had DVR'd the game just because I had to watch it 3 more times just to believe it had actually happened. And I tell you, I couldn't watch the AFC game because I was so wrung out there was nothing left in me. I couldn't handle it. I think I went and played Xbox or something. So, anyway, in that moment, it was clear. Whatever planning we'd done, the theme for this year's Super Bowl of preaching had to to be comebacks. Because as incredible as that comeback was against the Packers, and it was incredible, the truth is this book, the Bible, it's full of unbelievable comeback stories.
Yeah.
That's true. Stories of setbacks that become comebacks. So that's what we're going to talk about today, because not just because of what the Seahawks did last week against the Packers,
Yeah.
but because what I've guessed, with this many people in the room, there's some folks sitting here right now who could use a comeback. Maybe you're facing some sort of setback. Maybe others know. Maybe it's something you've hidden and kept to yourself. We all know what it's like to go through setbacks. And maybe today is that day that you are going to experience a comeback. You may want to rewrite, God may want to rewrite your story. So let's get right to it. Here's what we're talking about for this first quarter. Setbacks. They come in all shapes and sizes, but few things can tackle this as brutally as pain. You know what I mean? Maybe it's an accident and everything suddenly turns upside down. Or a spouse who says those terrible words, I don't love you anymore. Maybe it's a diagnosis. Maybe it's a layoff. The pain comes in all shapes and sizes. And there is not a character in the Bible who embodies what it is to go through pain more than this guy known as Job. There's a book in the Old Testament that tells his story that carries his name. And no, it is not Job. It is Job, all right? It's Job. This unbelievable experience that he goes through. What happens is unimaginable. Just listen. How's this for a bad day? This is Job chapter 1, verses 13 through 19. Just listen to this. One day when Job's sons and daughters were feasting and drinking wine at the oldest brother's house, sounds like a tailgate party to me, a messenger came to Job and said, the oxen were plowing and the donkeys were grazing nearby, and the Sabaeans attacked and carried them off. They put the servants to the sword, and I'm the only one who has escaped to tell you. While he was still speaking, another messenger came and said, the fire of God fell from the sky and burned up the sheep and the servants, and I'm the only one who's escaped to tell you. While he was still speaking, another messenger came and said, the Chaldeans formed 3 raiding parties and swept down on your camels and carried them off. They put the servants to the sword, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you. And then last but not least, the boom hits. While he was still speaking, yet another messenger came and said, your sons and daughters were feasting and drinking wine at the oldest brother's house, when suddenly a mighty wind swept in from the desert and struck the 4 corners of the house. It collapsed on them, and they're dead. And I'm the only one who's escaped to tell you. So he goes from having all these incredible things, a wonderful family, plentiful flocks, a very wealthy guy, that basically only having 4 servants. Just the guys who escaped to tell him. I mean, those guys that were kind of in and out like Czechoslovakia. You know what I mean? Those guys. Talk about a bad day. Talk about a bad day. Kind of like the day that Alexander's about to have, right? We read a story like this. Or maybe we think of people that we know, maybe our own experience, and we can't help but be filled with questions. I mean, let's just talk real honestly here, with all this joking aside. We know what it is to hurt. We ask ourselves, why in the world do these kinds of things happen? Whether it's headlines, or whether it's in our own family life. I can't tell you how many times, as a pastor, I have sat in a living room, or in a hospital room, or in a funeral home, or sometimes here in my office, and just cried with people, wishing that there was some simple answer for this pain that they're going through. The truth is, sometimes I even wind up scratching my head. But if you know Job's story, you know his friends were trying to give him simple answers, because that's what we want to do. We want to help each other feel better. But the truth is, there are not simple answers to these kinds of questions. There just aren't. They say, oh, there must be some secret thing you did wrong. God must be paying you back for some evil that you did. Of course, that's not true. But our brains go all kinds of crazy places. Even Job's very own wife turns on him, says, curse God and die. But like the Seahawks with less than 5 minutes on the clock, Job doesn't give up. He keeps pushing. He keeps pushing. God, give me answers. Why is this happening? But instead of giving him answers, do you know what God gives him? God gives him himself. He says, I know you're going through brutal things, Job. But as great as those things seem, I'm even greater. My power is greater than anything you'll endure. So hold on. And maybe there's some of you here this morning, and the biggest worry in your life is not what's going to happen at the game this afternoon. You got much bigger fish to fry than that. I wish I could give you simple answers, but let's be honest. Would it really hurt any less even if I could? What I can give you, though, is hope. What I can tell you about is an invitation in all seriousness. It's from the mouth of Jesus himself. Listen to what he says in Matthew 11:28. Jesus speaking. He says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Anybody feeling a little weary today? A little burdened? Jesus says, "Come to me." You don't have to walk it alone. I'll be here with you. Because he knows what it's like to experience pain. He's been on the field. He's had friends betray him. He's been treated unfairly. He's felt the pain of losing someone he loves. He knows. And whether this all makes sense later or not, he promises never to let you hang. If you read the rest of the story, you find out Job bounces back. He actually experiences even greater blessing later in his life. Sometimes it works that way, and sometimes it doesn't. But you got to hold on, because you never know. Because if you hold on, if you cling to that promise, no matter how hard it gets, you'll discover what so many others have. What Job himself learned in his story. You know what that is? Your setbacks can become your comebacks. And it's Jesus who can provide the comeback to our pain.
That's a touchdown. Touchdown. Team Wolfgang. You're off to an early start at the end of the first quarter. Team Wolfgang 8. Team Alexander 0. Alexander, you'll have the ball at the beginning of the second quarter.